help you look?
It's the 2016 road study map that I thought would be helpful if we're talking about roads. Bernie, you found something? Mike, going for a second try. We'll let you go. If the guys can't do it, I'll let you do it.
Okay, let's see if Mike.
I was willing to get up off my butt for a minute, but I changed my mind.
Y chromosome.
Are these microphones? So you don't just turn them on?
No, they're just turn them off. No,
I like how this one was like in my lap.
because I said it was only up.
They're on all the time.
Oh, it'd be nice if we could turn it off.
No, I don't.
Nah,
It's the only one I can find, sir.
it's a big thing.
I know,
Part
it's
of
on
it.
that cardboard.
Okay. It's really getting the hits.
I think I know where it is. If you have, I mean, do you want me to go look?
I think it would
I don't
be
want
good
to
to
have that on the
get
agenda
it.
for Bernie. One quick.
Bernie,
Don't tell her
The agenda. First, we're gonna watch Gabriel Clayton's,
Yeah, no.
and then we're gonna watch Vic's presentation.
Our Vic's presentation. You say what? The presentation, is that you?
yeah, it's on.
Oh, okay.
Have to pay.
And then
This
Mike-
one's very short and sweet.
Yeah.
Informative.
Well, Christine was supposed to. I even tried to tell Jason.
Confirming that if I have one more look at him, maybe I'm
About Maria calling. And she was calling, yeah.
I was like, well, she was at the
But she's so sick, she could barely leave the couch.
No.
He was doing the whole dramatic. What do you want me to do about it? I know he wants me to, you know, I'm not just gonna follow somebody else. He thinks. And look, she got those. I have that one. I know, right? Change another one. I don't know, I never tried, I didn't know they had a tape. Yeah. I know they have tape for, you know, glasses and stuff, and I tried that. It's like double-sided, it doesn't hold very well. It's on the side.
She found it.
That's not, at least it's colorful and it's,
Yeah, now it's bigger than that, right?
yeah, it's twice that size and it's only.
All right, we need to get started.
Okay. Let's get started here tonight. If everyone could take a seat, sit down, quiet down. Okay. This September 5th workshop for West Vincent Township is now to come to order, and please all rise, say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all for coming out tonight. We have a few things in store for you. The first is going to be a research presentation by Gabe Clayton, who is a student at Penn State in environmental sciences. He did some research into the environmental effects. So, Kathy, if you would get us going here. Gabe
My
wanted to
name
be
is
here
Gabriel
to
Clayton. I'm a senior at Penn State studying earth science and policy, and I'm here to talk a little bit today about gravel roads and more specifically their effect on human health in West Fisson Township. So I first want to speak on why gravel roads are popular to begin with. Most people think that when they're seeking out a new home or if they're looking to move, they actually seek out gravel roads, and there's a few different reasons for that, especially here in West Fisson. The first of which is that lots of homeowners favor living in a place with more rural feeling, and dirt and gravel roads always provide that. The feeling of asphalt can make people feel like they're living in a city. But the most important thing that a lot of people think of when they live on a dirt or gravel road is just the idea that it's safer for animals. So pets can burn their feet on asphalt, whether that be a dog or horses being uncomfortable on asphalt for long walks. Gravel roads are much more applicable to taking pets out like that for walks or rides on your road. The presence of gravel roads do also serve the purpose to decrease the temperature in the air slightly. When asphalt's heated by the sun, it can increase the temperature around the asphalt itself by several degrees and make the entire area off the road and on top of the road feel much hotter than it actually is. And lastly, much of the pro-gravel road arguments center around the fact that they're very easy to repair, so they don't require nearly as long of maintenance cycle, being that they could just be filled with dirt, silt, and gravel and patted back down with pressure machines, as opposed to having to pour asphalt, wait for it to dry, etc. So what is the problem with gravel roads? Well, let's go over some basic reasons behind the danger for them and what we can expect to happen to a resident's health when living near or on gravel roads. So much of the problem with gravel roads comes not with the gravel that's used to pave it, but more so with what is in the road dust itself that's being kicked up by vehicles or animals using the road. So the particulate that's been deposited in the gravel or road dust can contain a wide variety of harmful chemicals that, when ingested either through breathing, eating food that the dust has spread on, or just entering through your eyes directly, can cause a lot of damage. So either from heavy winds or vehicles traveling on the road, you see large piles of road dust being kicked up behind you when you use gravel roads. And contained inside that road dust may be some large visible particulate, and that's stuff that's not so concerning, but it's the small particulate that you can't actually see that's able to travel the furthest and do the most damage. Very small particulate can carry the most harmful of the chemicals and can travel up to 300 yards off the road through winds and just the velocity of which it's kicked up by tires. So there are three main substances of concern that are present in road dust, and the first of which is asbestos. Now, asbestos is something that most people think of being in old homes, but it's also naturally found in a lot of rocks that are used to pave gravel roads. Most of the gravel used in gravel roads in this region comes from North Dakota, and the mines in North Dakota actually have significantly higher levels of natural asbestos occurring inside the rocks than other areas do. And now these rocks, once they're pushed down by car tires and horse hooves over and over again, grinding against each other and slowly eroding down, can release this natural asbestos into the road dust and then into the air subsequently. Some patches of road dust are also concerned with harboring pollutant materials. Now, pollutant materials are just stuff that comes from humans, so asbestos doesn't include as a pollutant material because it's coming from a natural source, it's coming from the rocks. But there are a wide variety of heavy metals that can be deposited by vehicles using the road into the road dust that can also be a big danger. And they include lead, which can be deposited into the road dust from tetrafill lead-containing oil, as well as heavy metals deposited from rusting steel on the undercarriage of vehicles. Both of those things can deposit a large amount of these heavy metals into the road dust, which is then being inhaled and put into the eyes of the residents near the road. And the main concerns for the actual health effects of this inhalation revolve around respiratory issues. So higher rates of lung cancers and cardiac issues are a legitimate risk for people who live near or on gravel roads, as the constant inhalation of road dust particulate and heavy metals can wreak serious havoc on your immune system and your respiratory system. Not to mention eye irritants and allergens like pollen are present in road dust, and when they're being so frequently kicked up by heavy vehicles and carried into your home and your yard, it can damage you and your pet's body. Overall, gravel roads provide dangerous particles, a method of travel that can allow harmful elements to enter your system without you ever even knowing. because the particulate that's really dangerous is the ones that are too small to see and the ones that travel very far off of the road once they are kicked up. The small dangerous particles are some of the furthest traveling ones. With their small weights, they're easily carried by the wind when kicked up. And with this being the case, these health issues are not isolated to just the dirt or gravel road, but can travel several blocks beyond the roads themselves. So on top of the other environmental issues associated with gravel roads, this provides some reasoning on why they might be something that we need to consider reducing the number of in our community. And that is it. Thank you. And if you guys have any questions on the topic or anything revolving around my studies at Penn State, you guys can reach out to me at gtc5128@psu.edu or just text me at 610-850-4907. Thank you.
Great. Very good. Thank you to Gabe and videographer and the other parties responsible for allowing Gabe to put that together. Next, we're going to take questions, answers at the end of the evening here. So, Kathy, when you're ready, we'll have Vicki Lawback is responsible for the next presentation. If you want to speak to it briefly, and what do you think?
Or at length, educate us, please.
Amen. Is this on the phone?
No, this is the first one here.
This PowerPoint one right below it?
No.
No.
This, or wait, let's see. Okay, let's see this one. You're a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, well, I have a PowerPoint and a PDF.
Is that this? Wasn't it on the phone?
Don't be kidding me. Yeah, it's right here. I know, it's right here. Oh, my God, it's not. Oh, it's telling me that I can't do it.
Kathy, I can email it to you.
Yeah. It's different now. That's what I did. Can't read this. Read.
Do you have it for flash drive, Kathy?
That's what it's on.
Oh, here
It's
comes
not
our
seeing the
IT
flash
support.
drive.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank goodness we have Chris.
It's showing up on here.
Well, that's like history. We're not gonna see.
Big map.
Put it on this thing.
No, I think she did. Because I was gonna say, whether to where to put it in there. It wouldn't fit in there. She's certainly trying to think things that I said.
Thank you.
Because you look for it, he looked for it, he looked for it. I know what it looks like, it says.
Yeah, I have that in our shop. Yeah, it's part, we have to do a course every 3 years to maintain it. Right.
And then when you talk about roads, you have no idea what we're talking about. Ain't technology grand?
This is the one
Well, I mean, you're not taking care of it because you're sitting there, you know, taking care of it. I'm so sorry, Vic. We thought we were all ready for this. I'm Jackie, by the way.
And the back of there's the ambulance entrance. We had that. Well, they did. I wheelchair.
Crowd, you know? But it's just that standing there and sitting there and not, moving.
Well, and I'm fine when I'm sitting, when I stand up. I twisted my body like twisted with the flesh because I never had one of my friends. And after I sit for a while, then my it just isn't fine.
Do we want to, I guess we don't want to jump to you, do we? While we're trying to figure that out?
Well, I thought I was just here to pretty much answer questions, so. Okay.
All right. Cup of coffee? No, she knows.
No, I just
Never
know
said that Isabel was.
No, I heard her say that.
There's more to it than that. I like it.
Right now, she's not going to be talking about it.
And this is a person with him.
Oh.
Okay, so let's,
Vic do it without?
Vic, can you do your presentation
Just a
without?
discussion.
Nice dress, like the fabric.
Can somebody else get on to their?
I can, sure. Okay, yeah. I don't think it is, I don't know.
I believe the office is on.
You think it is on?
I think it's on.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, hi. Quite possibly, yes. Yes, you're on Kimberton Road? Yes, okay. Yep. Right.
I think we're gonna lose the crowd here.
Gotcha.
What if Mike were to get up next?
Who'd you send it to?
Is there some way that we can go back and,
Go get your password on Mike's talk.
Well, you can-
That works.
I don't want to show you this.
Mine up to it.
Okay, so a little change in plans here. We're going to have,
I mean, she said, yeah, updated to try to.
So, although I don't think I have a dongle with me.
thumb drive for her.
You don't have a dongle for that, do you? That won't work.
But we can have Mike talk while we're getting this up and.
Mike goes first.
He wasn't going to answer questions.
Yeah.
We're losing the crowd. Did you find it? Is it from when you first put it there? It's from that? Oh, like I would have thought it was the right where it was left. Yeah. Maybe someone put this on. I can answer your question. We'll make sure we get it. Okay. Let me ask her.
It is beautiful. You are very cheap. Do we want to email it to her?
Maybe I should go search for that map.
Listen, that map is big.
They really are.
Much bigger.
There was
So it has to-
one that was bigger, and it was
It has to
definitely
be
not.
tucked in
Because they
between
were two of the
something.
same thing, and it was very shiny and colorful.
They never used to. They used to oil it, so in the summertime, you get it. Because you oil it, and then it gets.
Okay.
Do we want to take questions?
No. Yeah, you know, I don't know how. Do you want to wing this now, or do you want to wing this now, because it's going to take a while?
You're gonna talk about the school bus.
Well, yeah, but that can just be part of our discussion. We're looking for options.
Chris, how long do you think?
Well, the other day, the school bus would not travel on the gravel road.
They want that
They wouldn't go up Jane Lane
How long do you think?
from Flowing Springs. So they proceeded to drive into our asphalt and park. They were coming down the hill from Hilltop. Yes, they're all new bus drivers, and they won't drive. They just won't drive our gravel roads. Well, yeah, but if it's your child, it's the end of the world.
I know.
Obviously, we're going to have a little change in plans here, so bear with us. And,
We can talk about school buses.
yep, okay, so Jackie or Mike, who wants to go first?
Yeah,
Just a minute while that update.
I'm Jackie, I'm the township manager, and I thank you all for coming. And first, I want to dispel this notion that I'm trying to pave all the roads, because I think asphalt's the way to go. That's really not true at all. I'm from Glen Mills, and I now live in Westchester, so I'm not from the city, and I'm not big on asphalt roads. What I'm concerned about is the amount of gravel that is washing into the French and Pickering Creeks every time it rains. We lose about 200 ton of gravel from our roads when it rains. And that gravel is traveling into the French and Pickering Creeks that used to be pristine, and now they're compromised.
Every big storm.
So if it's left unchecked for many more years, you're going to have a lot more gravel and a lot less creek. So the concern is, you know, we like the feel of the country roads, I get that, but is that more important than preserving the French and Pickering Creeks? Because it's a big problem. And I don't know if any of you are aware that the DEP has come out with MS4 regulations. And we have been fortunate for the last 20 years, we keep getting waivers because of our population isn't as high as neighboring communities. But I think that maybe after 20 years, they're not going to give us any more waivers, which means we're going to have our engineers prepare an MS4 program for the township. And what that does is it regulates the TDMLs, which is the total daily mass load of stormwater runoff. So when it rains, everything lays on the ground, and it's supposed to wash into the storm drains and then into the creeks, and it's supposed to be clean of debris. So what they're mandating the townships to do is have their engineers come up with a plan to make sure that our stormwater is getting into the storm drains as clean as possible without debris. The other issue is you have neighboring communities who their creeks are being polluted because we're letting all of our pollutants go into the creeks, and then it's traveling downstream to where they are. So the DEP, when we do our MS4, they can come back with various requirements, and one of them might be that they want us to dredge the creeks from all the gravel, which would be a terrible thing and cost the township more money than you can even imagine. The other thing is they're going to want us to pave the roads, period, to stop it from happening. So what I talked to Mike about, our roadmaster, Mike Hogan, he's here tonight. Thank you, Mike. The biggest issue is the hills. If we could just pave portions of the gravel roads where the hills are, where the majority of the gravel is traveling into these creeks, it would stop a lot of that and still maintain major portions of it could still remain gravel, if we could do that. And I'll let Mike speak more to that. He also told me the other day that the school buses have a hard time on the gravel. And if they get stuck, they can't go into reverse until somebody from the school district comes out to spot them. So the other day, there were some kids stuck on a bus for quite some time until the spotter came out. I didn't know any of this until yesterday. Mike was filling me in. So there's a little bit more to it than just, polluting the streams, which is a big deal, but there are other things to consider. So, we're not saying we want to pave your entire road and we think this is the way to go. What we're saying is, let's work out a compromise where we can stop polluting the streams to a large degree by paving the hilly portions, and then hopefully, that will be enough to satisfy the DEP when the MS4 does come through, because I think it's coming sooner rather than later.
Jackie, can I just ask about, I know you said that it was like 200 tons was lost every storm. So that's not a year, that's every storm. Obviously, we don't know, it
And that-
depends on
that
how
would
many
be
storms. What's the
Like
cost
a
of
heavy
that?
thunderstorm.
How
Okay.
big a storm, an
Well,
inch, 3
but-
inches?
Depends on the rate. I mean,
The last couple
if we
weeks,
get 2 inches in 10 minutes, we lose a lot of stone quick.
Mhm.
Get 2 inches over 2
Right.
days.
And how often are we
Make a difference.
replenishing that, and what's that costing us
costs a lot.
per storm, I guess? Because
Well-
we don't know how many storms we're gonna have.
Yeah, the cost is almost insignificant as to the cost of the environment at this point. So our wheel loader that we load stone with has a scale on it. So we weigh, one of our drivers in particular is very particular. And since 2014, St. Andrews Road, he has hauled 1,132 ton of stone there. And there is essentially nothing left there.
On one road.
One road. And that's one truck. We have 2 trucks. This stone, a lot of it as it gets washed, it becomes less usable because the fines are removed from it, and then it won't pack. And then it accumulates in the ditch. We have to dig it out to keep the ditches open. But the majority of it ends up in the stream out there. And we just need some alternatives here to stop this, because what we're doing doesn't work on these hills. The traffic has become, there's too much traffic going too fast, and a lot of it's too heavy anymore. I'm sure you've seen the Amazon truck go up and down your street 10 times a day, because I guess they can't figure out, like UPS, to go to here, to here, to here. They go there, and then they go around, and they come back. And so our traffic loads are to the point where the roads are coming apart. And again, it's not the flat and level areas, it's the hills. You've all seen the hills, how they wash down the edges, and it just, like I said, we need some ideas. We want input as what residents would like to see here, because as Jackie stated, when MS4, which is the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Program, takes place, that we are obligated to maintain these systems clean. And we can't do it in the state we're in.
And the cost is a lot because they're forever having to replace the stone, but it's also their time. We have a great road crew, but especially in the summertime, they're out doing a million things, paving roads, keeping the parks mowed and the township nice. And they have to spend a lot of time going out to these gravel roads and regrading them. We get calls from people who there's ruts, they can't get out of their driveway, they've got to go fix those areas. So it's taken its toll also on our public works department, so that they don't always have time to get to everything they need to get to. And they work really hard, and it's very hot out there. So, I hope you have an appreciation for how hard they do work. And it does take its toll, and it's a big cost. So that's something else we need to consider, how much money we're spending to continue to put gravel after gravel and have it just keep washing back into the streams.
And there's also a lot of fuel burnt just getting that gravel to and from. So if we can somehow manage to preserve what we have, that benefits all of us.
What's the source of our
We have two sources that we typically use. One is Cedar Hollow Recycling, which is a crushed recycled asphalt. And the other we've been getting from Martin Stone Quarry in Bechtelsville.
What stone is it? It's not whatever the North Dakota.
No,
with the
I
asbestos.
don't know what the North Dakota, I don't know why the guy from Penn State is thinking anywhere in the States gets it from North Dakota.
Well,
It makes sense.
And I know that there were some discussions that were thrown out about different types of materials that we could do as well. And I think there were some issues with that as far as something that was more pervious, that you'd had to build up the road. Can you explain about that? Because I know
I
that
think
everyone says, well, what about
someone
that
had
option?
sent me an article about pervious paving.
Right,
Pervious paving is it's an open grade and the water is allowed to flow through it. But underneath it, you have to have a storage area for all that water going in. And typically they're 2 to 3 feet deep of loose stone just to provide an area for that water to go into. But the one thing they do not work on is a hill, because it's like a wet sponge. It holds lots of water here. When you tip it up like this, it all comes out the bottom. So the pervious paving, like I said, can't work on a hill without an outlet. So, and you still need the drainage in place for when that recharge bed, which would be underneath, becomes full, and then the water still has to go somewhere. So,
Emergency vehicles also have to slow down when traveling on gravel roads because of their weight. I know, especially with ambulances, those few seconds here and there could make the difference between saving a life and not. And I know, especially from communities where we had speed humps where the ambulances had to literally stop before they could just gently go over it to keep their equipment intact. So that's a concern too with this gravel. These trucks are big, they're very heavy, and the gravel's just not sustainable for that.
So let's for now just take a couple questions and then we're going to get to Vic's presentation. So, John?
Behind Jim, behind you, Don.
How do you dispose of the unusable ground?
Jim, could you stand up and,
But Don had his hand up 5 minutes before you did, so
Yeah.
Don's got to go next.
Jim Berge, 1433 Birch Run Road. How do you dispose of all the bad gravel? There's a pile of gravel at the last storm. It's about 5 feet high and half as long as this table.
Right.
How do you get rid of all that stuff?
that particular gravel is sitting in our bin out here, and it will eventually be hauled to Cedar Hollow Recycling to be used as fill.
Okay, is there a cost associated with that?
Absolutely. Yep. I think it actually costs a touch more to get rid of that than it does for us to buy it.
We can't reuse it.
No, because what happens that the fines wash out of it. The fines
It
in,
won't pack right.
right. It's like your beach sand, some of it sticks together good, some of it falls through your fingers. It doesn't have the fines in it, it falls through.
Yeah, hi, I'm Don Shoemaker. I live on corner of Jane Lane and Bertrand Road. I've lived here since 1960. I guess my question is, Jane Lane has flooded ever since we've lived here for the last 60 years. It's really only in the last 8 to 10 years, maybe 9 years, where we really had any gravel issues. In the past, when it would flood, it would come across and you would, it would flood our pool or flood the lawn, but you wouldn't get the buildup of gravel that we've gotten in the last, 7, 8 years. And what I've noticed is that it seems that the township now, when you pave the road, you just keep throwing more gravel on it. Where in the past, what they would do would be just to scrape it, and they wouldn't just keep throwing on more loose stone. So I guess I would ask, if you look back at the records going back 30 years, how did they take care of the gravel roads back then? Because certainly we would have 3-4 inches of rain. We had hurricane. What was the one that came in 73? Agnes, where we had a ton of rain, but we never got the gravel runoff that we do today. And I think there's definitely a difference in the way the gravel roads are being maintained. So I would suggest go back and look at the records to see what they did, because certainly on the other side of Jane Lane, where the hill is on Jim and Donna's side, again, back in the 60s and in the early 70s, you never had that runoff the way you do today. And you never had the road erode. You had some ruts in it, but never the runoff of gravel coming down and piling into the creeks. And certainly if you talk about, we have a creek going into our driveway, and because of the gravel in the last 6 years, it has moved that whole creek 5 feet over because of the runoff. And we probably have, I don't know, 20 yards of gravel in the woods that have laid off, which we never had in the first 40 years that I lived here. And the other thing I would do, and I'll ask just as you look at the roads and you do the road work, when you're looking at it, I know that you're looking at a project for Jane Lane and the creek, but that project's all geared around controlling it when the road floods. Maybe they should look at it, so how do you control the creek so it doesn't go across the road? Because then you could keep the road gravel, but you would have the system in place where you're preventing the road from actually flooding instead of trying to control the water when it floods.
Thank you, guys.
Good, thank you.
Just to address yours, Mr. Shoemaker. Part of the Jane Lane design there at your place,
Yeah.
we were only putting a similar sized pipe in so that we don't cause damage to your property.
I know that, but you could put a second culvert in closer to Birch Run Road so that you could direct it, is my only thought.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Right.
And I think it'd probably be cheaper, but we don't need to discuss that right now, but I'd be
Okay.
happy to talk to you about that.
I think
Okay.
that is a question, how much of this can be controlled more with some stormwater management, which obviously is even more costly
It
and
is.
is needed all over. And obviously there's, the
And
rains are
even
more
before
intense
we
than they
try
were
to-
10 years ago.
Stabilize these roads, we have to have the drainage in place.
Right.
But a lot
Okay.
of the stormwater management is on private property, it's not
Well,
on, yeah, thank you.
true.
Okay, Brent?
Brent Brown, 2289 Beaver Hill. Just a couple quick questions. Great discussion. We're on kind of a high, flatter area around the corner of Beaver Hill there. Concerned about the dust, but also concerned about century-old trees. And if we're looking at paving, I think there's real concerns around some of the fauna that we've got around us that we need to be concerned about as we do that. The other thing is, have we done any velocity studies on what asphalt's going to do on hills versus gravel as far as water velocity and what's going to happen with storm runoff and what that means? You probably have. I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
Well, that would be more of a question for our engineer, but he's.
Because certainly asphalt's going to have higher velocity than the gravel. And
It would, but.
I'm concerned because we've got big ruts down the side of Beaver Hill all the way down the hill.
Right.
So just something for concern.
I believe we're ready for Vic. If you would get up and give your presentation. Vic, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Yep. Hi, I'm Vicki Lawbach. I'm with Green Valleys Watershed Association, and I'm just going to give an educational presentation tonight about erosion sediments and its effect on water quality. This photograph here, looking at Whitney's Place there from the cafe, the Birch Run during Hurricane Isaias. That's about 16 cubic meters a second of water moving through there, and you can see how muddy and full of sediments it is. Next slide, please. So why is this an issue? So how does it affect water quality? Sediments can clog the stream bottoms, negatively impacting the macroinvertebrates. And of course, stream designations that the DEP does, so the Birch Run's exceptional value, French Creek's exceptional value, and the Pickering is high quality. Those are based on macroinvertebrate scores. Sediments are also habitat for bad bacteria, and they can fill in stream corridors and ponds. This picture of the Pennsylvania state fish, the brook trout, was actually taken up in one of the headwater streams to the French Creek, higher up toward Hopewell. And brook trout, if you are a fisherman, know that they need clear, cool, cold water and a clean stream bottom for reproduction. So this is a nice gravelly stream bottom, doesn't have a lot of sediments in it. Go ahead. So this is the Birch Run, right below the cafe. It's one of the lower gradient, slower moving parts of the stream. And you can see the kind of the brown color of the stream there. That is sediment on the bottom of the stream. Impairments, water quality impairments from sediment and silt are a big issue in our streams. Next. So, and one of the things that the DEP looks at when it does its macroinvertebrate studies are the cobble embeddedness, and that's basically how exposed the rocks in the bottom of the stream are. So the less sediment there is, the more those rocks stick up, like in the bottom of the picture there, that is good. And then those areas where that brown is, you can see there are no rocks there. That's because the rocks have been covered with sediment. And again, where the cobble is exposed, you're going to get better macroinvertebrates. If any of you fish, you know that you're going to go to where the fish have something to eat. And those are those macroinvertebrates. Go ahead. Again, this is another chart from Pennsylvania DEP's Index of Biologic Integrity. When they're doing their macroinvertebrate sampling, they look at other things like that embeddedness. So on the upper left-hand side of the screen, you see that that is no sediment, very little sediment, rocks exposed, and that correlates with high macroinvertebrate scores. And then as you add more sediment, those macroinvertebrate scores go down, unhealthy stream. And again, that's the same chart with that cobble embeddedness showing. So basically, except for the low gradient section there of the Birch Run, it is a fairly healthy stream. So it does have those good macroinvertebrates, a lot of cobble exposed. I mentioned that sediments are ideal growth for fecal coliform bacteria. That's the bad bacteria. The DEP has chosen fecal coliform bacteria to gauge the swimmability of water. So we do not want fecal coliform bacteria in our streams. Next. Also filling in ponds. This is Zuber's Pond, right near the Horseshoe Trail and Hollow Road. Big amphibian crossing location, but you can see that over the past 40 years, that pond has filled in. And in fact, when I drove up Hollow Road not too long ago, it looked pretty green. You couldn't really see any water there. So this is, all that sediment filling in the pond and the associated wetlands and impacting that amphibian habitat. Like this is where we do our amphibian crossings. But when I moved here in the 80s, it was crazy. It was like a carpet of frogs and toads all over the road. And I don't think it's quite that way now. Yeah. So, and again, this is coming from upstream construction where ENS controls have failed. Next.
ENS?
Erosion and sediment controls. Those big socks that you
Silt
see.
socks.
Yeah. Silt socks.
Some of this is
fence.
not coming from gravel roads.
That is not coming from gravel roads, but it's,
The Weatherstone subdivision.
So where do sediments come from? So we have a recipe. We need fast-moving water. We need material that can be eroded, so that's soil or road materials. You need shear at the intersection of those meeting, that material and water. Then it transfers those erodible materials into the water column, and you create suspended sediments.
Where's that picture?
That is the pipeline right on Horseshoe Trail. Next. Stream banks can be another source of sediment, especially in areas where we've had old mills, like here at Warwick County Park. That legacy sediment has built up over centuries. And when we get these big storms, it erodes. Next. I don't know if any of you have been to Pine Creek Park down in West Pikeland Township. This is a really amazing erosion site that's about 12 to 15 foot high, that bank. It's rock that is decaying, the saprolite, and it's erosive. Next. And then we get to our unpaved roads. And you can see where the stormwater, it's cut a little channel, and as it is cutting through that, the heavy stuff is left behind, the lighter sediments have been suspended in that stormwater, and then they're flowing right down into the French Creek. And then as it goes downhill, it picks up velocity. I heard that word
Where's
earlier.
that? Is that?
That's French Creek Road.
That's
Yep.
yeah.
So, next. And again, I mentioned pipelines, so that one is on Hollow Road, and it's steep right there. It doesn't have good cover. That water has gotten a little area that it's gotten into, and then as it increases and its speed going downhill and cutting into that very erodible soil. Same with farms, that can happen on farmland. And that was, that picture was from 2014, I think. I did mention construction sites. This is the Polte development when it was under construction. Now, this was within a stormwater facility, but you can see how the different materials, very erodible. And we're all familiar with seeing this kind of stuff, especially nowadays. Next. And what does that look like, that suspended sediment in the stream? This is the Birch Run Road, Birch Run Stream, just across Birch Run Road at Westover, and you can see after a storm how muddy that is. And just think about, there's things living in there. There's the macrovertebrates, there's fish, we have freshwater mussels in the Birch Run, crayfish. So, this is what they're dealing with. Next. So again, there's our recipe. But what we need to do to come up with solutions, we need to know the volume, we need to know the intensity, and we need to know the duration. Next. So one of the things that we are working on at Green Valleys is understanding where the sources of the sediments. We have looked at a lot of the historic mill sites and the accumulation of that, what's called legacy sediments, that is very eroding. The south branch of French Creek, right between East Nantmeal and Warwick Township, is a very good example of that. All the high flows really eat into that accumulated sediment and push that stream all over the place. It's really changed over the years. We're also doing, my staff is, I'm not doing this, high resolution flow and sediment modeling. So hourly flow, we get the information from our network of in-stream sensors, and we are looking to provide that volume, intensity, and duration of stormwater events through this modeling. Next. This is probably familiar to a couple of folks. Birch Run Road, Janie Lane at Birch Run Road there. So again, what we need to understand to come up with solutions is how much water is flowing and for how long, and map out where the water's coming from. And this modeling, the hourly flow can help with that. Next. So those purple lines, this is a part of the output of the model, are little micro watersheds. And I'm just gonna hop over here to point a couple of things. So this is Shady Lane here, Birch Run Road. So you have the open land that has no trees, that water is flowing across. It is coming onto the road, onto Janie Lane, and in getting into those gullies. And as these are top of the lines, and these really close ones together are the steep part. So it is gaining velocity as it flows down that gully, and as it's gaining velocity, it's cutting. There is a little spot where it's actually hopped out of the gully along the road and formed its own new gully. And then, of course, the sediments enter the creek, which you see on your property right across the road there. Next. And so this is part of the model. So this is a simulation of Hurricane Isaias from 2020, August of 2020. And you can see that peak right there. That's our peak flow. And then this is the duration. That's about 3 hours. So there was that volume of water peaked at a certain point, but it started before, peaked, and then slowly went back down.
Okay.
Go ahead. Thanks. So, you don't want to just trust a model. So the blue line here is a simulation. And we use our network of in-stream sensors to validate that model. So this is the actual that's happening. And you can see the simulation is picking up most of those. Our in-stream network, so all these red dots, that's where we have these monitors. They measure depth, temperature, conductivity, turbidity, and they take that data every 5 minutes. So, and we are adding more. Okay. So, stormwater solutions. So the first step to designing solutions, engineers, they need to understand the water volume and velocity, and that's where Green Valleys can help municipalities. We definitely need something better than the Atlas 14 that engineers use. This is a historical stormwater data. There was a report out this summer from the First Street Foundation that's basically stormwater has been underreported for all those years. Everyone that uses Atlas 14 is aware of its shortcomings. There is a new Atlas 15 coming out, but it's, we're still on Atlas 14. We're doing the minimum stormwater designs right now, but we have exceptional value and high quality streams. So should we really be doing minimum standards on these high designation streams? The new Pennsylvania Stormwater Best Management Practice Manual will be using actual precipitation and continuous simulations. So this is a good complement. It's going to be a good complement to what we're doing with flow modeling. This is being done, the new manual is being done down at Villanova. So we have a great stewardship opportunity in the township because the Birch Run watershed is almost entirely located within West Vincent. And we do need to look at stormwater management, not on a property by property basis or on a subdivision by subdivision, but on a watershed basis. But that's a complicated topic, and we're not going to get into that today. So again, look at this picture of Hurricane Isaias, how fast the speed that, how the suspended sediment in there. Last one. This is one of our programs that we do, that Green Valleys does. So we do education, watershed education, and we take school students out. This is the French Creek, along French Creek Road. They are actually doing what's called creek snorkeling. So they've got their goggles, their snorkels, and looking for all the life that is below the surface of that stream. And there is a lot of life in our streams. Most of the time, we're not aware of it. So, and this is a great place to do this kind of activity. It is a healthy stream. And so, also Chester County often does these quality of life surveys, looking at different environmental issues. Water quality is always at the top of those surveys with county residents. So it is up to the municipal officials to decide what is the value of those healthy creeks in our township. And then how do we translate the value of these healthy creeks into better stormwater controls? So that's it.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Jerry Stone, and I live at 1645 Bertrand Road. From your presentation today, it sounds like the problems of the Bertrand with sediment are caused by runoff from fields, construction and such. It doesn't seem to have much to do with dirt roads.
In the Birch Run, probably not, but there are definite hotspots. And so one of the things that we need to do as citizens of the township is to understand the sources of all those different sediments and work to address them. So I just wanted to give a general education presentation about sediment sources, not necessarily like pin the blame on a problem.
But you're telling us where the sources are. We ought to be directing our attention to the sources.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and of course, you know, what I have witnessed is, you know, the person, the engineer who is doing the stormwater for, say, like Weatherstone, as an example, not to insult any Weatherstone residents, but that is something I remember being built. So the engineer does the stormwater design, but then there's the construction guys that are out there installing it. And then we get a big storm on a Saturday, and the water breaks through the E&S controls, and nobody sees it till Monday. So there we've had something that happens. There was a house that was built at the corner of Bushy Trail and St. Matthews, a high water table, a really very bad builder, looking to do things as cheaply as possible, maximizing his profits, and the constant mud makes an opinion when you remember it. And we had a huge storm on New Year's Day. Well, what regulatory agency has employees in their offices on New Year's Day or after 5 o'clock at night? So the only thing that we could do was take photographs of that, make sure the Conservation District got it, and they sent it to DEP, who then went after. So pictures are always important. Yes.
Vic, when can we expect Atlas 15 to come about?
I think it is, I think 2024 or 2025. It's not super fast.
So meanwhile, we're gonna be at a different standard.
But there are definitely engineers that are doing very innovative things. Michelle Adams at Meliora in Phoenixville does really innovative stormwater, looking at volume. Princeton Hydro over in New Jersey, but they work a lot in this area. I mean, the people are out there that can do this kind of much better analysis. Wait, Karis was next.
She actually had my question,
Okay.
Atlas 15.
Okay,
Thank
then
you.
Sarah, it's back to you.
So I get what you're saying about the design elements, and we can look at that and try to improve that. But you've shown us places that we have problems now. So if I look at that place where the water's coming off of French Creek Road into the French Creek, what can we do there? I think trying to do design elements is lovely, but there's the practical side of, we asked for 150-foot riparian buffer, and we have like 3 feet there between the road.
Right.
Should we be planting
Well,
shrubs?
Actually, Mike has to go, he's taken the dirt and gravel road course, so that the township can qualify for that money.
And what would that money?
Well, so he just went to an update training, and there is a new manual that focuses on design in sensitive areas. One of the things that I just glanced at it, I'm like Mike, I don't have to read it in detail, but I did see where they pitched the road toward away from the water source. So.
So then we put the gully right at the bottom of Beaver Hill.
That
But
was
is it-
one example.
is there
but
grant money for that?
Wait, so
And
let's,
I am
no,
not saying,
I don't want
Sarah,
to.
I am not saying that that's what we should do.
Okay,
But these
all
this
right.
book has a lot of examples, and your engineer is the one you should be talking to.
Well, except that you just told me Mike knows this stuff
Well,
now.
he does have the.
He knows how to
focus.
fix it, but we need to
But-
determine where
Well,
to
can I-
start
can
and
I
what we can
interject?
afford.
Mike and I drove around after one of the storms a few weeks ago, and he showed me where you can see on some of these gravel roads, you can follow where the gravel's going, how it reaches into the woods, and then it kind of floods out and eventually works its way into the creeks. And then someone said they saw where it breached the state road where Mike, what road was that where it was
That's
getting?
Birch Run.
Birch Run, where now the public works has to go out and clear that road off because the gravel's now washing onto the state
And
road.
Janie,
So
Coming
every time
about
we
500
lose
feet through the woods now.
tons of rock,
Birch Run.
it's not just sitting somewhere, it's going into the waterways, and that's the issue.
Mike just said the example was the Birch Run Road coming off of Janie, 500 feet through the woods.
Right.
Between Janie and Davis, right? That's been happening for a long time, but one of the designs previously for the stormwater inlets along the Janie Lane, when the proposal came in about paving from Don Cook's driveway all the way down to Birch Run Road, was gonna do sheet flow across that hill. And I said, please study the impact on the water flowing down near between Halls and Davis Lane, actually, because you can see that water coming off the hill.
Right.
So are you proposing to put more inlets and do more sheet flow down to,
Well, we want
Birch
to
Run
catch the
Road.
water at the top of the hill.
and then where do we?
Erosion starts at the top.
Wait, my question goes further back. So we've just gotten a grant of $100,000 to do
Right.
something about Janie Lane,
Correct.
but there was a price estimate by Arrow or some predecessor of 1.2 million to fix the drainage problems on Janie down.
Okay, here.
And do we need a PennDOT permit to do stuff at Birch Run Road?
We are not working on Birch Run Road.
So we're just gonna do everything on either
On
side
either
of it?
side, right.
But not, isn't there a pipe under the road that's not
There
doing its
is,
job?
there is a sort of a stone culvert under there.
Okay, so we're getting 1/12 of the funding. How much of the problem is that? What's the overall vision for Janie and how much does this solve?
Well,
And then I want to go back to the question of can't we put some shrubs along French Creek Road to help slow down what's going into the stream?
I mean, should we get
So-
this much into the weeds, though, about we could be
Well,
talking
just-
all night if we do this without answering other questions.
The main issue is getting the water across Jenny Lane without going over it.
Right.
And there needs to be a really big pipe at the bottom of that, right in front of our property. That's where this old culvert that was put together maybe 150 years ago under the road, and it's plugged up.
Right,
You
so
can't keep
that's
it
what,
open. It's not even a pipe, it's,
I understand, but it's not our pipe, it's PennDOT, so,
yeah. So what I say is, go and fix it and ask for forgiveness later.
yeah, well,
I mean, what are they gonna do?
I mean,
Well,
we need the money and it's
back
opportunity cost
in-
too, right?
I'm gonna say around 2007 timeframe. We had it all set up to do that. We were putting the pipe, PennDOT would not give us approval. They would give us a verbal approval, but would not put it in writing, to put the pipe in.
You got a verbal approval, say, okay,
Well-
go to court, I got a verbal approval.
We could lose
But-
fuel funding.
But, right, but verbal approvals are only as good as who says them. And if he says, well, I never said that, then,
So what
you
are
know,
they
it
gonna do?
needed to be in writing.
I mean, what are they gonna do legally?
They could take away our liquid fuel funding.
Okay.
so,
And they're not gonna pay for it either.
so, Julie,
Julie Foster, 1682 Hilltop Road. I have a quick question sort of in the bigger picture of stormwater management. You mentioned that a lot of the runoff, kind of piggybacking off what you mentioned, coming from construction sites, stormwater management sites. One of the issues that we came up in the Planning Commission a few times in reviewing the stormwater ordinance amendment was that a lot of the issues in our township with flooding aren't from new construction, they're from unmaintained stormwater management systems that were put in decades ago. Are there any efforts or proposals in the township to require maintenance, to enforce the maintenance that was required in those original permits and zoning variances? And I say this as a person who has a stormwater maintenance thing on my property I had to put in. But no one's ever come back to me and said, hey, are you maintaining that?
Well, the MS4 program is designed for that. What your township's required to do is to find where all the stormwater is going and to come up with a plan to make sure that the old systems are working and that new systems are put in place so that all of the TDMLs go into the storm creeks without pulling sediment and debris. So, the velocity, when you put in asphalt, yes, you're gonna have more velocity of water coming down, but that velocity of water is not bringing gravel with it. It's just water coming off the road and going directly into the storm drain. So
Maybe I wasn't clear. I'm talking about private stormwater management basins on private property. So for example, when I put in a pool, I had to do a stormwater management
Yes, you did.
system. And no one from the township's ever come and asked me, how am I maintaining that? And at least legally, that's, a condition of the permit, right? Permits are revocable if I don't, follow the
Engineer is
rules.
supposed to follow up on those things, so I'll have to check with them.
Yeah, and I think the question came up though.
You're talking 10 years down the road and.
So the question came up though was sort of, again, like these larger developments that, going back to the 80s, those systems are now failing, and the concern was, oh, well, that's the problem, there's nothing we can do about it. And my question is,
Well, some of the
Is
storm
the township-
basins, back in the 80s, when they were doing these homeowners associations and these storm drain, these banks, they were putting them on the deed so that the person who owned the property abutting these storm drains was required to maintain them. A lot of people were not aware that that was on their deed and have not maintained them. And I don't think the township has ever forced the issue, but with MS4 coming down the pike, it's something we're gonna have to look at.
so it is something you guys are looking at?
And we would hope to get another waiver, because if you think of how many stormwater installations there are on private property.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a multi-step process, right? Like going back through all the permits and the variances, figuring out where they are, and then just maybe sending a nice letter, be like, hey, well, asking us nicely, and then kind of getting more and more.
Think of the
20
cost.
years, I don't know that they're gonna give us another waiver.
Right, but think of the cost of identifying those, sending out that nice letter, getting feedback, getting engineers out there. We will pay for what we have to pay for, and we'll do it as expeditiously and efficiently as we can. But all of these things are huge programs. And so we've just touched the tip of the iceberg here, and I understand you don't want to get in the weeds, but I'm in the weeds because we have problems that we can work on with design guidelines and MS4 studies and permits, but what can we do now?
Well, right now, we're going out to bid for Janie Lane, and Mike and I have discussed this, and if we pave from the top of the hill down, we will resolve a large portion of that problem. I'll let Mike speak to that.
Well, the plan is to stabilize that hill, because anybody who travels that knows it all ends up the bottom. We put new stone down, we roll it in, traffic churns it up, we get a storm, we plow it off, whatever, the ditches fill, the water does not stay in the ditches, and then it all ends up in the woods or in the streams.
And is it really true the school bus comes down that hill?
No, the other day when we were paving, the school bus had to take an alternate route, and they refused to go on the gravel.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't gravel, it's that curve part right down.
Well, but, and again, the school bus issue is its own issue, because
And where
they're
were
new
you?
drivers, and they got, a tree came down on Cedar Mill. They sat there for 40 minutes because they can't back up.
Where were you paving? Just a second. So that $100,000 isn't going to cover paving from the top of the hill down to Birch Run, though.
No, that's only it's a cost sharing.
So is that 1.2 million number that we had previously?
I don't know that
the right
number.
ballpark?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're going out to bid, we're gonna find out, right?
Right.
We're bidding the options.
Yeah, but when you bid it,
There
you've got a
was,
plan.
there was an
ready to
estimate,
go.
but the 1.2, that must be a very old number.
Okay,
Because
so we're really,
that's
Probably
been discussed.
2.4 now.
we're really getting way far into the weeds.
Right.
Enough. Julia, please.
Julia Brendel, 2472 Flowing Springs Road. So how about the other end of Janie Lane, where our driveway is, that every time it rains, it washes out and then you can't get cars in and out of the driveway?
Which end you're on?
The other end, so Flowing Springs Road. So Flowing Springs and Janie Lane,
Right.
that end also, everything washes out and all of those stones are washing down there. Is anything going to happen at that end?
Yes.
What?
There's stormwater piping to go in there, and then we were going to pave a smaller portion on that side to get past the driveways and ease that transition.
And are these two parts?
I'm not sure which, are you with the very first drive
Yep.
on the left?
On the left-hand side, the driveway always washes out at the end.
Past that, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
And then piping, like I said, on both
And
sides.
are both of these parts of the Jane Lane project this year?
Yes, they're all on the same project.
And what's the other projects on the next one after Janie? Because people here are aware of that one.
St. Andrews?
St. Andrews almost has to be the next one.
Well, so has this been decided then that we're absolutely going with this, what you're saying about,
Her part, yes, is part of
but
the
not
Jane
the
Lane.
hill? The hill's the question mark about whether or not we
Whether we,
have the funding and,
right.
Okay.
Now, the stormwater system has to go in. The question is, do we see if it works and risk plugging it all up, or do we pave it at the same time, essentially?
It'd be less expensive to pave it now because we've already gone out to bid on this road and costs are going to go up, and then we'd have to go out to bid on it again a second time if we decide to go back and do those paving. That's why we're talking to the public and explaining why we want to do just certain sections of those roads. Because, you know, we're the gatekeepers of these waterways and we have a responsibility to keep them clean for the next generation and the generation after that. So if we can do a small part to stop a lot of that, I think that that's the responsible thing to do.
Mark,
Could you come up and give us your name and,
Mark Moskowitz, Davis Street, Union area. Can somebody tick off what the trouble spots are, so Jamie Lane, a dozen of them, tick them off?
Sure. Right now, our biggest issue is between Janie Lane and St. Andrews. And then there's an area of Sawmill coming in off of Flowing Springs, and then Hilltop from where we stopped our stormwater and paving up to the top of that hill there. And then to a lesser extent, Davis Lane on the horseshoe side of the road.
horseshoe trails.
Right.
It's hard.
Not Beaver Hill.
Beaver Hill is okay. And Donna, we have your pipe in, we're waiting for the concrete structures, and then,
I'm thinking of the hill on Beaver Hill.
yes, down
Going
down to French Creek.
Bernie will have to keep his signs up.
It's, that's a tough spot. And a lot of our gravel roads, the road is the ditch. The road is the low point. We have nowhere to go with the water. And then too often, residents direct their water to our street, figuring we'll take care of it. But it all goes downhill. Almost everyone here lives downhill, someone. Almost everyone. Mr. Grogan
Yeah, I'm
is
at the top of the
fortunate
hill.
to live on the
What's
top,
everybody?
yet he still has property that is affected because it goes over to our gravel road.
Well, and it's a good point. Like I live at the top of a hill and the stormwater management was done probably incorrectly 25 plus years
Right.
ago and doesn't bother us a bit, but other people are.
Ms.
feeling-
Foster there, you're a prime example of a neighbor running water down her driveway that all ends up in your place. Where, you know, she should probably be directing that into the lawns and things like that. But it's a tough enforcement thing. Nobody wants that knock on the door, hey, go fix your stuff now. You know, everybody kind of needs to step up a little bit on their own and try to make things a touch better.
And in some cases, I mean, could it be that just putting some shrubs in that are going to divert the water or slow it?
Quite
that might
possibly.
help, or,
I mean, we have situations where we now have gutters that run right to the street. Well, that can't be. You know, you got to at least give it a chance to soak in the lawns and whatnot. I mean, yeah, you don't want a wet lawn, but we need roads.
Brent?
Yeah, Brent Brown, Beaver Hill. I think it would be helpful because great information, great discussion about the roads and the gravel and all that and the sediment. But I think to the point raised earlier, if there could be just a map or just a list of here's the projects and their priority, here's what they look like they're going to cost.
Put that out there.
Yeah, I think that would help
Definitely we can
everybody
work
really
on that.
focus on what we're doing, what we're doing next.
And after the meeting, if you have a few minutes, I can show you one that's in the other room, because I'm sure I can find it.
Yeah,
I think we're all trying to get to the same place.
Right.
It's just how do we do that and communicate that well?
precisely.
The other thing I don't know whether it has been looked at, and I've seen it in travel, actually in Canada, they have silt catchments in creeks and rivers where they're actually putting in heavy rock that then the silt falls over in a deeper area and they can actually pull that silt out. And it's done with excavators
Well,
usually,
Is
but,
that sort of what
in
you were
a-
talking about, dredging streams?
and this is something that's set up just for that in a
Right.
small area.
We
And I
do
don't know whether
that-
that's applicable here. I'm just bringing it
We
up.
do that in a few areas. Mr. Grogan's there is one in particular where we have some layers of silt fence in. We dig a sump off the road to catch everything, trying to stop the stone before it gets down through the woods. Because once it gets off of the right of way, it's a big deal for us to clean up.
I'm sure. And so I'm not sure that, like I said, I'm not sure that's applicable here
Well-
in different places. It's something I've seen that might be something to consider.
And to speak to that, there's a handout that's in the back, How's My Waterways? And if you look at that, you'll see there's a key on there, and the red stop sign means that the water body is impaired. French Creek is impaired. And you can go through this list, and it tells you all of the different creeks that are impaired because of what we're talking about tonight. So it's not just, somebody saying, oh, this is happening. This is actual report showing that it's happening and that we're now impaired.
Hold on.
That, but it needs
Harris?
a little more.
Harris, you want to get up?
Harris Egan, 1912 Kimberton Road, not a dirt road. Couple of points and a question. First, this is a really charged topic for the township, and there's a good turnout tonight, but there's also hundreds, thousands of people not here. So I think it would be really behoove the township to make these educational resources easily accessible on the website, through all the communication.
It's being recorded
means.
and will be posted.
Yeah, but a lot of people aren't going to watch a video.
We have the presentation from Gabe on our website, and we'll put Vic's up there.
Okay.
But I also think this is probably workshop one on this topic.
Right.
Because we haven't heard the impact of asphalt roads, for example.
And along those lines, I wanted to add a point. Going back to Gabe's presentation, the young man from Penn State, he started out with the appeal of dirt roads, which was very good because a lot of people do like their dirt roads. He didn't mention traffic. And that's a very big concern for people who have dirt roads that may be paved, is cars go faster. So that just has to be on the record somewhere. My question, Jackie, I think is probably for you. So MS4 is the municipal sediment regulations.
It's the stormwater runoff. They're called TDMLs, which is the total daily mass load of stormwater runoff in your township.
But MS4 was the
Storm, sewer.
Separate storm sewer system.
MS4, okay.
Just if you put MS4 program, it will Google it.
I can
comes
Google
up.
it. Okay, I understand that West Vincent has been granted a waiver because of
In the
low
past.
population in the past, and I understand that that waiver will likely not be granted at some point in the future.
That's correct.
At which point, the township will be mandated to invest significantly in improved stormwater management, correct?
Yes, correct. And it takes years to put that program into place. So even if we get another 5-year waiver, we need to think about getting started on our MS4 so that we're ready the next time around.
We're on pins
So
and
that was
needles
my
right now. We didn't get the approval yet.
Only some of us are on pins and needles.
Until we have it, I'm concerned.
Municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4.
Okay, I wrote it down. I'll look
It's under
into it.
PennDOT.
You kind of answered my question was,
Yeah, I think
what
we
is
should
the
be
time
proactive.
frame?
Yeah,
Like, when do we know when a decision will be made, whether
check
or
every
not a
day.
waiver?
We check every day.
Okay, so it could be imminent.
it could be imminent, they could come back and say, no, you're not getting a waiver, and then we'll have to start from scratch. If they give us a 5-year waiver, it's probably gonna take about that long to get our program up and running. So we're gonna have to be proactive and start working on our MS4. So in the next 5 years, we're ready to go with it.
So even if you're granted a 5-year waiver tomorrow,
It would still probably take that long to get.
you understand. Now, if you find out tomorrow that you're not granted a waiver, what does that mean for the township budget?
It means that, I don't know what that means for the budget. I'll have to get back to you on that. I mean, it's an expensive
Well,
undertaking.
can't that hurt us in some ways for grants and such that?
Yeah, if we're not
because we're not in
compliant, the way grants work with the county and the state is if you're not compliant with one division, then the other divisions are less likely to give you grant money.
Would we
So-
lose our fuel or no?
But if we've been notified, we have a period of time to remediate. It's not like.
Yeah, it might not be
Get away-
immediately,
right,
but
so
it
it's not
does
gonna
have
hurt us.
consequences, and
Yeah,
would we
be expensive.
possibly lose our liquid fuel money as well?
We wouldn't lose our liquid fuel money over that, no.
Okay.
But if you fix roads not in accordance with PennDOT or with their governing rules, like fixing a pipe that they didn't give us permission to fix, then yes, we could lose liquid fuels for that.
Okay, so this is really important public knowledge for people to have that, aside from your feelings on this matter,
Right, it's-
we might actually be mandated, you might have no choice.
We might not have a choice.
Well, right, at some point it will.
But if we get proactive and try to fix some of these really problem areas, like we're talking about the hill on Janie Lane, since we're going out to bid on that, if we could pave that area and we could show that, to the DEP, well, we're doing what we can and we've done this and here are the repercussions of that. We're getting a lot less, stuff going into the storm. That would be helpful because they're going to mandate that through the MS4.
One last question, if it's okay. On Julie's point about the stormwater on private property, so I'm one of those landowners that when I bought my new house in West Vincent from an old West Vincent house, I inherited stormwater.
The storm basin, right?
That are shared with a neighbor across the street. And I didn't even know until a couple of years ago that I was responsible for maintaining them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just are not.
No, no one told me.
Not telling you, hey, if you buy this property on the corner, you have to take care
Why
of
is
the
it
storm
always
basin.
flooding, right?
And so are there resources, or could there be resources for a property owner that tries to be a responsible steward?
I
Like,
don't know if there's
who
private
do I
granting out
call
there
to
for
come
that.
and check it out? I don't even know.
Well, normally you would have an engineer.
I would ask
I mean,
you.
that's
Go
like.
and look at it.
Resources for education, which, that's something that the EAC is trying to do to help people to understand these things.
So I think that's.
And I'm on the
I
EAC,
know.
and I don't fully understand it. That's where I'm asking, like, if resources.
Find a program, maybe we can get up and running. I don't know what it's gonna cost or how we'll fund it, but we can look into that.
But
I know our engineer will typically be called out if there's a problem with the basin to figure out what's going on. And usually that's when the homeowner finds out, oh, it's on your deed and you're responsible to do this. I think the better approach would be to tell people now so they can start maintaining it before it gets in disrepair. I think that's probably a smarter.
Are there resources currently on the township website that I can dig up to pursue this?
That we should look those up and get them
We'll
on the
get some-
website.
yeah,
Thank you.
Rather than have
That's all.
our engineer come
Thank
out,
you.
give you some sources.
Thanks, Karis.
Larry, just, again, Larry Stone at 1645 Birch Run Road. What seems clear to me is that we have a stormwater management problem. I mean, gravel roads may be a small part of the problem, but it sounds like the overall problem is actually stormwater management. And from what, and if I think we got to start addressing that now before we get in trouble with the state here. Comment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
This is the beginning of that effort. So educating the public,
Bernie, I think we should make sure
What
we
pic-
get this letter into here. I don't know who wants to read it.
Go ahead, please.
Does someone want to read?
You read
Oh,
it.
I guess I'm reading
You've
it,
got the
okay.
microphone.
Yeah, we were given a letter to read by someone who could not make it tonight. This is from Barbara Mueller, and she said, "I would like to officially enter my opinion into the record for tonight's workshop regarding the West Vincent Township gravel roads. If the following can be read into the minutes, I would greatly appreciate it. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting, but believe this issue needs my attention. As the master of foxhounds for Kimberton Hunt and lifelong resident of Janney Lane, I oppose any and all thought of totally paving the township roadways. These roads are the character of our township and one of the only pieces of our rural character remaining. These gravel roads are linear parks where neighbors can stop and chat, horses can be ridden, and strollers can be pushed without worry of speeding cars. The gravel roads lend themselves to the aesthetic and character of our stone walls and wooded areas. West Vincent is clinging to the rural character by a thread. Do not pull the last string and push us closer to suburbia." And she gives her information to be reached. So I just want to make sure we got that opinion out there as well, as that is definitely, there are some people who are of that opinion.
John.
John Eldridge, 1634 Hilltop Road. I do live on the dirt road part of Hilltop Road. And in the last 5 or 10 years, the screenings have flown onto my property up to 30 feet away from the road. And we push it back, but it doesn't help. It continues. But one line here is that something has happened in the last 10 years to make all this worse. Janney Lane is a problem. And I know years ago, they started putting in the gullies on Janney Lane, they put screenings instead of stones. And that's what washes down. That's what's out on Bertrand Road. It's all these screenings. You fill the ditches in. It just seems like the wrong way to fix a road, to put screenings in the ditches. And that's what is all across my property, and it's my neighbor.
What you're probably seeing as screenings or the fines washing out of the snow, out of the 2A, the modified part of the 2A modified.
Yeah, but
so it leaves the larger stain.
6 rock or something instead of
modified. Would you like to drive over that though?
No, in the gullies. I'm not driving in the gullies. You can't pack it. You can't run your roller down the gullies. You can't pack them. You put rock in there and you let it go. But you put screenings and you can't even pack it down with your rollers.
Well, like I said, we don't have screenings to put down.
Mike,
Well, modified.
You've been working at this township you were here before, right? So
yes.
You were probably here before the time period that they're talking about it doing it the same way?
I think probably everyone would agree that in the past 10 years, our rain events have changed. I mean, I don't think anybody would say different there. 20 years ago, we had a backhoe and we scraped the roads and kept them together. But our population has probably tripled in that time, which so has our vehicular traffic. And then the rain issues on top have created just a situation where everything is starting to move.
And that there's a lot to that, and Janney Lane might be very susceptible to that. Our Hilltop Road, there's not many more houses on than the last 10 years. It's just not.
Well, but there's quite a few more at the other end. Now, granted, they probably don't come up your way.
Yeah.
But again, your issue there is the road is the ditch above your house. So all the water that accumulates in the road, you're the low spot and it's coming toward you. And I can't change that. I can't change the fact that you're at the low spot.
Well, over the century, it's changed. On a dirt road, there's always, on the hills, there's always walls on the side.
Right.
Because it's washed out. On our property, the road now is 24 inches higher than the terrain, because all the screenings over the last 100 years have come down and raised it up. And so it doesn't flow into the woods all where it used to.
Right.
It just comes down and flows where the road is now raised up 18, 20 inches above the terrain.
Okay.
Julia.
Julia Brindle, 2472 Flowing Springs Road. So going back through history, when the dirt roads or the gravel roads were working properly, and okay, maybe we didn't have as much water, have we changed the way that we're doing our roads? the method, the technology, or anything like that? Has that changed, or are we doing them the same exact way we were doing them 20, 30, 40 years ago? Same stone, same materials, same grading, same everything?
We have adapted some of the dirt and gravel low volume road program.
What does that mean exactly?
Part of that is we use a segmented grader blade, which does not separate the fines like a straight blade would. It's kind of technical, but it's their recommendation to use that blade to grade our roads. Otherwise, again, if we lose the fines, the road cannot stay together.
Right, I understand that. Okay.
And then we try to roll them at least once a year. And fortunately, like this spring, we got very lucky. We didn't have to plow. So we didn't do a lot of grading this spring. But then, again, traffic and weather just tear the roads up.
Okay, so, but we're not using a different size stone or a different material or anything like that. We're using the same thing, just a different blade to grade them?
Well, for the most part, that's the biggest change. And again, years ago, we had a backup. We didn't have a grader. So, we have adapted, but everything has a price to it. And equipment-wise, it's a big price.
So we think that the way we're doing it now is better than the way we did it 20 and 30 years ago?
And again, that's partly why we're here. We're trying to get ideas from everyone, what we should be doing.
Because didn't you say 20 or 30, 40 years ago it wasn't a problem?
But the water,
But
the rains are different.
Well, yeah, I mean, rain is, but that doesn't have anything to,
All of
that's,
these uses are.
the rain, okay, so we need to add some stormwater management, but the actual texture of the road should, how pervious is it and things like that? Like, has any of that changed?
no, a gravel road is considered impervious.
Right, I understand that. But if it's graded properly, if it's higher in the middle and goes out, I mean, I know like we have a problem on our driveway, we have puddles all the time, stuff like that. So are we talking about we're using different materials, or we're grading differently, or we need to add stormwater management, or all three?
Definitely all three. There's always room for improvement.
And Julie, the Davis Lane at the end of my driveway.
Right.
Was paved, and it was really the right thing to do.
Mhm.
Because we would get the hurricanes and I would have an absolute tank trap, a couple of feet wide and a couple of feet deep.
Right.
And one storm, I remember they brought in 8 truckloads of dirt just to get it back up. Well, of course, because the
Gravel with.
Oh, I don't deny that there's probably, I don't deny that there's probably areas that should be, that paving would definitely help, but then also how much more quickly is the water going to come down and go straight down Janie Lane and straight into the Birch Run? Is it going to create a flooding problem down there?
And we had a situation that wasn't going to go straight down Janie Lane. It goes straight into a stormwater swale that was already there. It just gets it directed there without taking out Davis Lane in the meantime.
It's essentially cleaner water.
Right. Okay.
Rather than, the incident she's speaking of, we probably put a few 100 ton of stone in that had washed out in the hurricane.
On Janie Lane on that other side?
On Davis.
On Davis, oh, okay.
And I don't know if everybody heard that Mike just said that was the year he started, was 1999.
Right.
Which.
Hurricane Floyd.
We have quite a bit of history.
Good job.
And
I know that one.
I mean, it's really nice that, we have that continuity, that you've been here
Right.
and you know these roads and you've seen the changes and
Right.
you've seen the different things that we've done. So that we're really lucky to have that.
Okay, because we do want to keep as many of the gravel roads as possible.
And we're all sensitive to that. We're not
Right.
here.
We know that's our
as Jackie-
identity here.
As Jackie said at the beginning, this is not about paving.
It really isn't.
Yeah, imagine what would happen if you paved Black Horse Road.
Well, there's a bunch of residents that want that.
And they're
Crazy.
One and half that don't.
It's going to be a 95-mile-an-hour speed zone through there.
You are correct.
That's
Takes
what
all
they're
kinds.
split. I have a question for Vic about impaired streams. Can they heal themselves?
It depends on what the impairment is.
Well, let's call it silt because we've talked about silt.
Well, it's not gonna heal itself all by itself.
but if there are more stormwater controls and things are done to try and deal with it, I mean, if there were
So
no
not without
people,
aid?
probably it would heal itself, but that's not realistic.
Well, so there's some places on the Birch Run that are worse than others, and so I'm thinking, usually I'm somebody trying to look at a bigger picture, but now I'm looking at those hot spots that I don't know where they are yet, but it's like that picture on French Creek Road. If we know that's a problem, we have to do something about it. So likewise, so the dredging, that was a really scary thing, that some presentation talked about dredging a stream. We don't recommend that, do we? Thank you,
I don't know.
thank you, thank you.
Jim?
Yeah. Good.
Jim, go ahead. Go ahead.
Jim Berge, Birch Run Road. Two things. You'd mentioned possibly putting the piping in without paving. That'd be a big mistake. The experiment's already been done because there are pipes there and some culverts that are completely silted in from all the roads. So it won't take more than a couple of years for those pipes, I don't care how big they are, they're going to be filled in. Secondly, behind our house, there's probably about a 40-acre watershed. Comes down behind our house, and there's a large swale there that catches the water so we don't get flooded out. And of course, after it rains, it's almost up to the top, and of course comes out at the bottom there, at the bottom of Birch Run Road. So the engineering has to take that into account too, how to deal with that swale that's going to collect, many acres feet of water every time we have a heavy rain, which of course is like every other week now. So.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Karis?
1912 Kimberton Road, Karis Egan. I think this is a question for Vic. And I'm piggybacking on what Julie Brendel was just sharing, because she posed a question that I was mulling over myself, and I don't think she got a clear answer. So I understand that right now, the township is considering paving just the problematic hilly dirt roads that are compromising stream quality, correct?
Yes.
Specifically, Janie Lane is like the number one. So you don't have to be a stormwater engineer to know that water is going to have faster velocity running down a paved road than a dirt road. It will be cleaner, but it's going to run a lot faster and potentially cause more flooding.
But they'll be putting in stormwater outlets for that. So the engineers will study how fast the water will come down, and they'll put in storm drains to accommodate for that. And then the stormwater will be directed to go directly into those drains as opposed to.
And then the drains will go directly into the creeks, right?
Yes.
So my question for Vic is, does high velocity yet clean runoff damage streams at all?
Yes, it can, especially, if you have water that's coming out of a pipe, it's gonna be like a fire hose, that high
Right.
pressure. And then where the water comes down, you see falls and stuff, but it curls back around and it can erode behind. So yes, it can be a problem. The best thing to do with stormwater is infiltrate. Like before we had impervious surfaces, houses, roads, etc., the rainwater would just infiltrate right down. So the best thing to do is infiltrate. Some places you can't do that unless you're gonna get an easement from a private landowner to put a basin on their property to infiltrate that.
Okay.
Some homeowners may not want that.
And we could plant
So you-
more trees and more meadows.
So thanks for answering the question. So there is some damage from high velocity, clean runoff to creeks. I'm assuming it's less damaging than the dirty sediment-filled runoff.
Yes, but it's like
That's
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
right. But that's especially a concern for the township right now. If you're specifically looking at paving the hilly dirt roads, then you're going to have cleaner water, but it's going to be really concentrated into the creek, which.
Karis, you raised a great point. There's a lot of things that we really have to look at the balance Because if the water is moving faster and it's going into the stream and there happens to be a big rock on the other side that the water is hitting against and not hitting the far stream bank, I mean, it's just so many elements into this.
Right, and anytime you
Powerful.
change something, and this is potentially a change, you want to make sure you get it right, because if something wrong happens, then that, like if there's already a big segment of people that are unhappy about a proposed change, you know where I'm going with this.
And we are working with engineers too. We're not just trial and error either, so.
Excuse me a second. George Martin, did you have your hand up?
I just had one quick question. All these dirt roads we're talking about are relatively narrow. If we pave them, are we gonna keep the same width that we have now, or are we talking about making a wider road?
We're kind of limited to our banks. So as far as making them wider, it's almost not possible without a lot of excavation.
Okay.
Are they?
Thank you, sir. Just,
Okay.
come on, let the audience please speak. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
You ready? At Kingraver Green Lane, dirt, flat.
Yep, no issue.
No issue. Well, a little bit, but.
Yeah.
You can go home. That's
Right.
I just wanted to put an exclamation point on Larry's comment and ask if the township has requested a quote for paving Jamie Lane. Is that true?
I don't believe so. I believe
We're
We
about to
don't
go
have
out
a
to
cost
bid.
estimate just
But the-
yet.
Oh, okay.
But the $100,000 is for stormwater controls.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that is going to be designed by somebody better than whoever it was that designed the one that's in there now with the pile of mud at the bottom and the.
That was 100 years ago.
Yeah, our
It was 100
engineers
years
have
Well-
worked out the road program.
Anyway, the point is, if we pave the hilly roads, or if we pave Janie Lane, that's not going to slow down rain, right? It's going to come down faster. And then if they're crowned correctly, it's all going to run off to the sides. And if included in the request for a quote isn't a well-designed drainage system, and I still don't know what's going to happen when it gets to the bottom. It's going to be same as it is now, except it'll be clean water in high volumes running into Birch Run, relatively speaking, after it's paved and so on.
Mike, have you seen the plans for
Yes.
Jamie Lane?
So I assume we're talking about the area above Birch Run, not the flowing spring side.
Right.
Where you're,
Yeah.
okay, so the plan has pipe and inlets starting at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And then where the upper diversion swale is, we take that section of water and move that off into its current flow.
So that does not come down there.
So that does not come down the hill.
It does not come down.
Well, it does not come down the road toward your place. And then we open up the pipes, the existing pipes that are filled again, and which we can only keep open for maybe 2 storms as it is now, because so much comes down from above. And then that will definitely help you at the bottom, because the water will not come down the road at that point. It will get off of the road.
How do you discharge water over the whole property? You know, the whole property there, the hill?
Yeah, that outlet is on the list side there. And then there has to be a rock outlet there to slow the water down.
What are you gonna do to prevent the pipes from clogging up again?
Well, that's the idea with going to the top of the hill. You catch that water before it has a chance to churn up much stone. And then by keeping the water clean, it doesn't cause that ditch down the
By burning
side.
water off, really.
Yes.
Less
You-
flow farther down, less likely to clog.
Right. 20 years ago, I think we probably put 2 pipes in there, and they lasted for many years. And then a neighbor put a pipe in under the driveway that happened to churn things up. And at that point, we could never keep the pipes open. We've spent thousands of dollars cleaning the pipes, only to have them filled within weeks. So our big lesson that we learned there was you got to start at the top.
Yeah.
Don't try and catch the water halfway down.
Exactly.
Is this a new design? While we're in the middle of this topic, is that a new plan for Janie Lane, or is it the one that Cedarville did?
No, this Norm, our
Okay.
current engineer, has
Because
a plan.
following on to George's question, he and some other people in the room were probably on the planning commission when there was a discussion about going all the way up to the top of Janie. And we were gonna have to kill a big old tree or get the electric company to move a telephone pole to be able to meet a minimum road width.
The pole has been moved. It already has. And if you look at the plan, we inventoried the big trees and the pipe goes around them.
And is the plan available if anybody who lives in that area would like to look at it?
We could get a copy.
Okay,
But
thanks.
Anything else?
One last question. If, let's say that Janie Lane and the other hilly dirt roads are all repaired, they're all macadam, they're all properly, is that going to make much of a difference in French Creek, and over what period of time? If the volumes, as I understand it, the volumes are increasing because of the weather, and those are going to keep going up potentially. And so we're talking about not necessarily dirty water, but still higher volumes than 20, 30 years ago of clean water going into the creek. And I'm not sure how that's going to affect the quality of the creek. And I don't expect an answer, but it's something we need to think about.
Definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Don.
Just one comment, Don Shoemaker, Jane Lane, Bertrand Road. Just one concern, if you're looking at paving the hill of Jane Lane, as that water comes down, unless you can, when it comes right now, what happens, it comes right across with the velocity, it comes right across Bertrand Road and comes right down across our yard because it comes across the road. And I know a couple years ago, you put a sort of a swale in there, which helped. And in this last storm, basically I've got like 100-foot, 4-foot wide gravel path now through the backyard because it all came across. So the concern is with the velocity, when you pave it, if you don't do anything to that catch basin at the bottom that's at the corner of Jim and Donna's property, the water's going to go on top of Bertrand Road, and the road's doesn't have that much of a slope that it's not going to direct it right across, and it's going to come right across and could cause some issues. So just something that I think you need to consider about. The other comment I would just make is that we're talking about, well, if it's paved, it's clean water. I've never seen a flood on paved roads where the water's clean. It's always muddy, and it's muddy because it's coming out of the soil, it's coming out of the dirt. It's not necessarily coming from the gravels. When you look at all of this flooding that happened in Maryland, I forget the name of the town, where it went through the city, everything was paved. So from the argument that, if it's paved, it'll be clean water. It's not clean water. The flood water is silty, regardless of the paved roads and regardless of the dirt roads. So I think we just need to be aware that it's, velocity is the key, and doing whatever we can do to reduce that velocity is going to be important. So as you look at, Jane Lane, the other option would be to go back 60 years ago and just make it into a horse trail again and stop all the car traffic, because that's what it was.
Whitney.
That works too.
It works too, yeah.
But
I like that plan.
with the pipe system there,
Yeah,
it should reduce the amount of water coming down to the.
okay. But it's going to go somewhere, so I guess the only question would be,
Right, the water that comes around his property, we can't catch until it hits the street.
right.
But everything above that, we're.
Yeah, and my only point is that, if it doesn't hit my property, it's going to hit Hall's property, which
Yes.
or it's going to hit Calhoun's property, because it's going to go down, it's going downhill. So unless you get it sort of underneath the road and get it into the creek bed, and that was my other comment. I know what I talked to the engineers on Jane Lane, right. But the thought is, if there's a way to keep it under the road, then you eliminate some of those problems. And I know, yeah.
And unfortunately, we have to deal with PennDOT, and that's a whole nother issue.
Okay.
Whitney, do you want to come up?
Yeah.
I
don't have a pipe size on hand for.
Not for the original pipes that are there?
Oh, for what's currently there?
Let's start the sentence.
Yeah.
Sentence at the
We'll let you
beginning.
ask your question before we answer.
I am Whitney Lee Yeager. I live at the flood zone at
The lovely photo we
2336.
had.
The picture, the first picture, 2336 Flowing Springs Road, where all the water ends up.
On its way to the covered bridge.
Prior,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So my question is, how big are the pipes that are existing at the top of the hill that you are thinking of replacing?
Well, it's either an 18 or a 24 inch.
Are you talking
And-
about your road or Jane?
No,
No.
we have to talk about Jane, because that's
Yes.
where we're starting.
Right. So the one at the upper swale, I believe is 24 inch for the cross pipe. The lower pipes are 12 or 15.
So can I get the volume and velocity of what you're thinking of putting through eventually?
I don't have that.
I know, eventually,
but yes,
when we get there.
yes,
I would like to be notified of that.
Okay,
Thanks.
do that.
Awesome.
Hi, Donna Brennan, 1433 Birch Run Road. Three things. First of all, thank you for this program. I think it really is enormously helpful. I came with the idea of trying to understand what the issues were, and I do have a better understanding. Second, I think you did a good job of dispelling the notion that you are trying to pave all of our dirt roads. And third, I think the Vic's presentation was very important to this whole topic, and I hope that you keep in mind the very valuable resource that Green Valleys offers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, Mike, anything else?
Nope.
Jackie?
Good.
You're good?
I just want to thank Mike for coming here to do this tonight after working all day out in the hot sun, and this is very late for him. He's an early guy, so I really appreciate Mike doing this.
That's right.
Yes.
Go to bed. Thank you.
Yeah.
And given that I'm thinking this is part one, get your questions for part two, send them to office about the roads, because I think there's back to that balance question.
One was on the, for on Janie Lane, on the, not the hillside, but on our side.
Right.
In the creek. When the engineers were out, they thought that was gonna be done sometime this fall. Is that still? the
That's still the plan,
Okay.
yes. But we have, in order for us to get our grant, the project has to be done by May 9th
Okay.
next year.
All right, I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in
Second that,
favor?
right.
Okay. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks for your early patience.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
They didn't hear. They made a big difference.
Vic, thank you very much. I do want to know where those engineers.